Welcome to PopTernative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hi, and welcome to the PopTernative podcast here on Blab. I'm your host, as always, PD Beats. This is the podcast where we have digital dialogues and discussions from the worlds of social media, sports, and pop culture. This is a special episode. I just want to basically say wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving to all my American friends and family. I hope you had a great day of, eating food and being with your loved ones. So today we are joined by three amazing guests for this evening's panel. First, we have from TSN Analyst and Director of Scouting, Craig Button. Craig, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
We have producer from Sports Illustrated, more for the NHL stuff, Michael Blinn.
Hello.
And we have community manager from Toronto Maple Leafs, Chris Lund.
Hi there. How are you?
So thank you guys so much for joining the show this evening. So before we get into the discussions, I just want to quickly go around, and what we do at PopTernative is we allow you to give a little bio about yourself, anything that we need to know about you, and then we kind of get into the discussion. So why don't we start with you, Craig?
Well, I mean, my bio is out there, but for me, it's about now. Michigan football is back after a lot of miserable years. Jim Harbaugh brought glory back to the Wolverines Saturday at the Big House, Ohio State.
We just had.
That's what it's all about. That's where my bio is at right now. It's all I care about. One thing.
Well, we just had a couple of last week. We had Brad Wagner, who's the creative digital lead for University of Michigan Athletics, on the show. So I think he'd be happy to hear that from you, Greg. Oh, he's putting on.
Oh, there we go.
He's putting on a hat.
It all comes together.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
There we go. Yeah, it all
Chris,
comes
what
together.
about Chris? What about you? Give a little bio.
For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I've worked the last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs, handling the digital side there, the website, social media feeds, all that jazz. And then the previous, 2.5 NHL seasons before that, I worked with the Ottawa Senators. So the Leafs gave me an opportunity to come home and raised in Toronto, and can't complain being part of Leafs Nation. It's a great time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of people don't know, but I'm going to say it because it's not really a secret. Like you said, you were with the Ottawa Senators originally. And now,
yeah, absolutely. I kind of made my foray into the NHL with the Senators. That gave me a great opportunity there, and then the work I did there gave me a chance to come home and join the club I cheered for as a kid. So that was a great chance, and it's a lot of fun.
That's great.
Sounds like you were a plant, Chris.
Sleeper agent.
For sure. Now you know everything the Ottawa Senators do.
Yeah. Oh no, trust me. I hear from them every day about being a turncoat.
Yeah. So the discussion that I wanted to have, obviously it's going to be more hockey centric based on the panel we have, but this is something you can apply to sports. You could apply it to anything. But we often talked on PopTernative in past episodes about the concept of when you're watching sports, your cell phone is your best friend. You're tweeting, you're live tweeting games. It's a big part about how we watch the game. What I realized too is not necessarily so Chris, when you're with the Toronto Maple Leafs, there's of course for sports organizations there's strategies when it comes to live tweeting and maintaining everything. But another thing too, and I know Michael, you're very active on your personal account, Craig as well, myself. We're pumping out content and keeping everyone informed, and also being a prosumer, producer and a consumer. So my question for the panel is, how do we have a proper balance in terms of when we're whether it's an actual schedule or not, but when we're using social media on a daily basis, whether it's from a personal angle or from work, how do we balance to make sure that everything's in there? Do you use it more for information, but at the same time, are you also using it more to create content and to inform people? So Craig, you're all about informing people about, up and coming prospects in the National Hockey League. How do you balance that, a combination of, using it to inform, but also to consume content?
Well, I think the first part is that when I'm watching a game, it's really like almost impossible for me to live tweet. So I recognize that. So I try to understand, what information is relevant. What information would people be interested in? I mean, there's a lot of things that people may already know, and with a lot of prospects. But in terms of just trying to make people aware, and I look at it as trying to young players. They're going to, I mean, this is the world. This is the world we all live in. And young players, to help them feel, in my view, that it's safe and, that it's not this attack community. Because, no matter what you do, you're going to have some of that. But to just try to make it, hey, listen, you know what? I may do rankings and everything, but I'm always going to try to put the players in a positive light. And I try to rarely do I have anything negative to say on Twitter in terms of criticism or negativity. It's about what the positives are, and then hopefully my ultimate goal is that the people you're talking about, especially the young players, is that they're really comfortable knowing that this can be a good place to be and to exchange with.
Michael, you're focusing more on Sports Illustrated on NHL, so yeah, there is prospect talk as well, but you're you guys are doing NHL. How are you balancing that as well, even from your personal account? Because you are very active on there as well.
When I tweet, I like to basically just have fun with it. If I'm watching a game, it's not my job to tell other people watching the game what they're watching. My job is to kind of, paint some color around, did you see what just happened? Holy crap, did you see that save? Here's where that kind of fits in with a narrative that's been going around this week, or it's going completely against a narrative. So I like to use it as more of a, let's have fun, let's share some content, and, say what you have to say and make it fun.
Chris, it's obviously going to be different for you because, especially, tweeting from, the Toronto Maple Leafs account and, doing some stuff in your personal accounts, of course, those accounts are going to be handled in a different light, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a matter of finding a balance. It's, we kind of, every team does a bit differently, and things are always changing the way you do things from that kind of team account. I know I certainly do the Leafs account differently, and as of November 26, 2015, than I did the Sens account back in January of 2013. So it's just kind of a matter of it's kind of really glorified trial and error. Some of us get luckier than others at the end of the day. From a professional standpoint, you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't, what a fan base is receptive to. And that changes. I know certainly I see a lot of differences from Toronto to Ottawa. Ottawa, has its own kind of vibrant community. Toronto has a very kind of different animal, and it's got its own kind of pros and cons to it. From my own personal account, I've started to kind of scale back a little bit in the last few months, just because when you're constantly running an account of north of 1 million followers, you kind of burn yourself out a little bit. So I use it more as like an informational timeline, keeping track of things, communicating with friends and whatnot. But yeah, it's kind of, at the end of the day, you're just kind of plug and play and see what works and what doesn't. And that goes for both, your professional entities as well as your personal.
How do we go ahead and, because of course, one of the things that, and Craig, when we, had discussions, we talked about this, the negativity that comes with, social media and sports. There's going to be situations where you don't even think you're going to be able to handle it. But then there's got to be some things that you can do to, to block it out. And I use the word block because, there's the block button, there's the mute button. But it's become a culture where everyone is, a critic, especially in sports, especially in hockey, right? A lot of people are becoming, not even affiliated with, major media or sports teams, but they're creating blogs. They're creating blogs with really big, followings. Are there ways that you guys have that, to kind of block out, like techniques to block out the negativity on social media from your standpoints? Craig, do you have anything to say about that?
I have no problem with criticism whatsoever. I think I learn, just following up on what Chris was saying, I think it's a great exchange. I learn lots by having an exchange with people, and whatever the topic may be, I learn as much, sometimes I hope maybe more. And I think that it can be healthy to say, okay, I didn't look at it that way. That's a good point. The only time I block people is when they're vulgar or they're personally insulting. And they don't have to agree with me. They don't have to agree with me in any way, shape, or form. I engage with people. I find it good. And at the same time, it gives me an opportunity. Okay, here's my perspective. Is there some kind of give and take there? And conversely, is there some give and take on my end from their perspective? I can answer pretty much unequivocally that that's a yes. And I find that really, really educational in terms of, as Chris said, plug and play. We're all learning. We're all trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work and have some
Chris,
fun.
what do you think about that?
I agree with Craig. At the end of the day, you want to be able to get along with as many people as possible, even if it's not like an actual tangible getting along so much as just coexisting. But I was kind of fortunate in that I have a very expansive sense of humor, and nothing, I'm pretty easygoing. It's pretty tough to bug me. I don't think I've ever blocked anybody on Twitter from my account, the Senators account, the Leafs account. Back when I was at the Score, I don't think I blocked anybody from that account. It's one of those things where I will say there was a time when I first started, writing and blogging on the internet where things would really bother me. But that's kind of filtered away with experience, and the more I've gotten used to it. I talked to my parents, who obviously keep tabs on my stuff, and it's just kind of a triangulation, doing the job, and a lot of it for me is just water off the back and staying positive. And at the end of the day, you have an opportunity to make a positive impact, and I think if you focus on that aspect aside, like at the end of it, like I'm telling the story of a hockey team every day, and as long as someone's getting that story, as long as someone they like this, they like that. People aren't going to like everything you do, but as long as you focus on that kind of improvement, and I mentioned how I do things differently than I used to, and I'm sure a lot of people know the comedian Louis C.K., who talked a lot about when he first started seeing improvement was when he started scrapping his act and starting from scratch. Every time he did a special, he'd throw everything out and start over. And I kind of try to approach things the same way, where you kind of every so often it's good to just pitch everything, start over, see what works, see what doesn't. You get a sense of what people like and what they don't like, and a lot of people aren't going to like anything you do, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to take that with the territory and move on and do stuff that you find satisfying, and odds are you're going to hit more people that way.
Yeah, and Michael, being at Sports Illustrated right now, because I knew, like, in the past you did work for NHL.com, correct?
Yes, for about 5.5 years. Yeah,
but now you're with Sports Illustrated, where NHL is a part of it, but not as much in the center of attention than at NHL.com. So, do you sometimes does it become maybe harder for you maybe to monitor the NHL stuff that goes for the Sports Illustrated accounts, maybe because then maybe you'll have the people who are not into hockey that are into football or other sports kind of say like, oh, I don't want to read this stuff about hockey. Who cares about hockey? That type of stuff. Does that ever pose a challenge? Those type of things?
It's come up before, but if people are going to take the time to respond to things with, hockey is not a sport. All right, well, that's not meant for you anyway, and you just wasted 10 seconds of your life on hockey. Something you don't feel like wasting your time on anyway. So, I think both Craig and Chris have it right, that you're here for a debate, you're here for engagement, and if you can't have a sense of humor about it, then it's not going to end very well for you. If I can't laugh at me, then no one else is allowed to laugh at me, and then it's really just awkward.
There are situations where, at the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, we have a lot of people who are, a lot of fans that are very vocal about, a lot of the stuff that happens in our league, like with the officiating and all that. And I've learned to, block a lot of it out and just take with grain of salt, continue. But it's hard. It's difficult, you know. It is a hard thing. It's a process. And Craig, the one thing I, love about you as an analyst on social media is you take the time to respond to almost everyone that interacts with you. And that's something that I think, I don't see that done much from analysts, hockey players. And that's something I think that people like. They like creating dialogues with you and getting your perspectives of it. But there are situations too where, you're going to have to monitor, the discussions, have a judgment of who you're going to respond to and everything. Is there ever, but you see yourself more as someone who's open to having discussions and conversations with passionate fans, correct?
Absolutely. And to Michael's point, it's about engagement. I enjoy the engagement. It's not about, trying to push my thoughts on somebody else and having them accepted. Here's how I looked at it. Here's what I think. And, I always make the joke that there's only one thing I'm certain of. I'm going to be wrong. That's the only certainty I have in my life. I'm going to be wrong. So, have some fun with it. To Chris's point of view, laugh at yourself. I mean, that's just the way I've always been. And I think people, as long as, to Michael's point, hockey's not a sport. Well, you're not going to respond to that. I don't anyway. But other people that take the time, I find it really, really interesting, even sometimes that somebody might say something, and I wouldn't say overly critical, and you respond to them, and then you get into a discussion, and it's like, wow, okay, I guess I can be engaged. And I think that's what social media is so much about, getting engaged. And for me, I really thoroughly enjoy all parts of it.
Chris, what do you think about that aspect to the engagement? You do have a lot of fun on the Toronto Maple Leafs accounts. I see it. I see the discussions that go on. It's fun, and the best part about it is I know the voice behind it. So I would see a tweet, and I'll be like, yeah, that's totally something that's Chris, Because you're not the only one tweeting. You guys have a team, right? Or is it just you?
It's there's two of us, myself and my boss. Of the things that go out, I'd say I probably am 95% of it. More often than not, it's me. Whether it's practice, games, events.
So thank you for the Timashov retweets. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. He's having a great season. How could I not?
Are you gonna start? Are you gonna start using #TimaShow? Because I made that for you.
Well, we'll work on it. When he makes the team, I might be able to sneak it in there for you.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's one of those things where we have the luxury, being the team that we are, whether you love us or hate us. Everybody has an opinion on the Toronto Maple Leafs, whether it's positive or negative. There's nobody who's on the fence about the Toronto Maple Leafs who watches the NHL. So I kind of take that as an opportunity to have fun with it. So whether that's, reinforcing positive fans with just goofy stuff from their favorite team that makes them think like, oh my God, the thing that I love, talk to me on the internet. That's great. And if if you help make their day better like that, awesome. And if it's someone who hates the Leafs and you have some, you throw a playful jab their way and they think like, oh, okay, they're not so bad, walking away from it. That's another great opportunity as well. So, and you can get into it with other teams too. I know that's a lot of teams like, going back and forth and stuff like that. So it's an opportunity, positive or negative, and it's really how you spin it. I choose to be a bit more kind of proactive and chatty and try to, spin everything on their head. I know it's kind of a concept we started playing with when I was back in Ottawa, because there'd be times where we'd struggle even though the team was competitive. Yeah. And it's like, how do we keep interest even through all this online? And we kind of called it our kill it with kindness approach, with just talk to everybody and take it to them, and you can kind of build steam that way, and it's something I've taken with me, and it's seen positive results everywhere I've been, so I like it a lot.
And I think the NHL makes an effort to have fun with a lot of their posts, whether it's from the NHL accounts or from the NHL team accounts. The puns, the hashtags. It's all about creating content that's going to make someone go, "Ha, that's awesome." You know what I mean? And take the effort to do that. And I know, Craig, there's once in a while where you'll tell me there's some stuff that you just can't resist retweeting or favoriting, because it puts a smile on your face, and it's something cool,
It is, and I talked a little bit about the young players, but you think about Roberto Luongo and his raison d'etre for going on Twitter. It was just really the situation in Vancouver, and he thought that was a great release. I mean, he's just fabulous, and I think that everybody enjoys Roberto because you don't see Roberto the goalie now. You see Roberto the personality, and I think Chris and Michael will both agree with me. I mean, the league is full of personalities, and they can come out in different ways, and we can.
So I just want to tell you, Craig, because I think this is pretty cool because you're a big fan of the QMJHL, and during our podcast, people can tune in live, and someone who's actually tuned in right now is Mitchell Balmas from the Charlottetown Islanders. So be nice, but how about a little scouting report to bring it forward into the 2016 draft?
Well, okay, I'll give you a little scouting report on. I mean, last year, Mitchell last year. I mean, as a 16-year-old, trying to find his way into the lineup, and that was a pretty good team in Charlottetown last year. So you're trying to find your way. I think Mitchell has played well this year for Charlottetown and is showing why he was a high pick in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League draft. And when you start to watch a player, and I don't think it's about one time watching a player. I don't think it's about two times. It's watching them over a period of time and watching that growth. And certainly skate well. He's got an offensive bent to his game, and I think that as he gains confidence in those areas, he can only get better. But that's why you got to continually watch, and it's never about a one-off. It's a player. It's never about one good game or one bad game. It's about a period of time because the greatest players that have ever played the game have all had bad games.
Mitchell, that was for you. Mitchell was telling me he was looking forward because Mitchell actually is a big fan of social media, and he's really active on there. More as a consumer rather than a producer. We joke about that a lot. He doesn't like tweeting out a lot of stuff. He likes consuming it all, but he's really active. He was actually like, "Oh man, you're having Craig Button on, but I have a game tonight." But I guess they had a big win tonight, and he's joining us this evening. But Michael, getting back to you, you're a very, and I say this, no pun intended. You're a very punny guy. You make puns all the time. That's kind of your thing. Pete, someone
Hotline Blinn, who knew?
Yeah.
The amount of times I still have to explain that to people, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
I'm still recovering from Drake night with the Raptors. It's okay.
Did you not see my tweet where you were talking about that you were a twin? Did you see my tweet where I was like, so you're not twinning, you're actually blinning? Did you see that one?
Yeah. We have gotten that for.
I'm sure you get that all the time.
Over 3 decades now.
Okay. Yeah. But it's like, so getting back, like you use puns all the time, whether it's from your personal account, whether it's in the content. Is that a thing that you think is catching on tremendously overall? This association that you wouldn't necessarily think with sports, social media, and puns, because you've been having conversations about it for a while.
I'll say this much: I don't. For the 5.5 years I was at the NHL, one of the things I helped to pioneer were the headline puns. Mm-hmm. So I do want to make a blanket apology. I'm sorry, but also I'm not, because if you didn't like them, they weren't for you. It was a way for my coworkers and I to blow off some steam and have some fun. And I've always been a little bit off in terms of my sense of humor. There's 20 people down the hall right now that will back that statement up. I like to have fun. If I can't, make a crappy joke here and there, then what's the point of it all?
No, I agree. And the cheesier sometimes I think the better. I did something with the Charlottetown Islanders when every time they win a game, I'll tweet out, "Did the Charlottetown Islanders win? # I'll say yes." And then a lot of people, they like it, and like Jonathan Dunphy, who's a friend of mine who's tuning in, who used to do work for the Islanders as well. He, would always use them. And, that to me, Craig, we've had this discussion before. When I do something like, the Dashing Dane or Timo Time, like a hashtag for a player, and that catches on, it's one of the best feelings. It feels so cool that like so many people are using it and people have signs of it at games and everything. And I think, Chris, that must make you feel good too, right? There's more of an opportunity for you to do something really awesome with such a big, pull you guys have with the Leafs social media, right? Must feel good when you do something that you're maybe not sure about that will like catch on, but if it catches on, it must be a little pleasantly surprised, right?
Yeah, it's a good time. Probably the best example of that I can think of is a couple years ago when I was in Ottawa. We swept the season series we had with the Capitals in Washington, and it was kind of a weird game, but we still found a way to win. And it'd been a weird time for the team, so I tweeted out after the game from the Sens account. Always a fun time visiting the other nation's capital when we leave with 2 points. Hashtag thanks Obama. And a lot of people don't understand. For those who don't know, there's kind of a running joke where you can find Americans online. No disrespect. This is the thing where it's people talking about like, oh, I got sick today, missed school. Hashtag thanks Obama. It's like, oh, I got dumped. Thanks Obama. So I use that as just kind of a play on that. And Washington, the people in Washington were furious, and everybody else thought it was hysterical. And I actually got in a mail. I still have it somewhere. Someone sent me a Thanks Obama T-shirt to my office at the Entire Center. So that was probably like a crowning achievement for me. But it's always fun when that kind of thing catches on, and I still see people in Sens Twitter that I follow using that after they beat the Caps now. So it's been a few years and it's still kicking around. So I like that a lot.
Oh no, that's great. And Craig, you're I think when it comes to my hashtags, you're one of my biggest fans. Sometimes you just pump those out on your personal account, like it's unbelievable. And I appreciate it, but it becomes a point where it's like a hashtag that I created, but then it becomes the League's hashtag too, right? Everyone else starts using it.
Well, I get 5 cents for every time I do.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's there's a monetary gain for myself in that respect. But so you talk about it too. But like I think like you talk about the dashing Dane, like Nikolai Ehlers. Has embraced it, and Timo Meyer has embraced Timo time, and whether Dmitry Timoshev embraces Timo show, but that's the play. That's the play with it. Like Matthew Tkachuk, who's a top prospect for this year's draft. I mean, his Twitter handle is Tkachuk.
It's amazing.
I mean, so there's a real cleverness in that, and I mean, I admire. Michael, and I admire Chris with the puns. I wish I was quicker. I'm always good 10 minutes after the fact, but the immediacy of it and the ability to do it in the moment, I think there's a real brilliance to that, and I always enjoy it. I wish I had more of a talent than that. But it's trying to have some fun and let the players know we can all enjoy their skills on the ice, but be playful and with respect to them as personalities.
Absolutely.
I just want to be clear for a second. Did you just think punning is a talent? I'm so glad this is being recorded. I have
You add it to the resume right now. Add it to the. Pull it up.
I'm doing it.
Update the doc.
Craig Button approved.
I guess we'll have to put a hashtag on that.
I'm just gonna start use every time I tweet out to Michael. I'm just gonna use hashtag Hotline Blinn. And it's just going to be a thing from now on. And then to the point where people are like, what is happening right now? Why does he keep doing that? I would keep doing that until it's a thing.
I've been told people will unfollow me if I change my Twitter handle now.
You can.
It's
not your handle, it's your name, right? You're still NHL Blinn.
Yeah. If I change my display name, people will unfollow me. Which
how about you just it would be really fun if you changed your Twitter handle to Hotline Blinn. That'd be the greatest thing ever. But you're not going to do that. So I don't even know why I brought that.
I mean, I might go, sit on that handle for a little while and see where that goes. But
all right, so we talked.
It's funny though how like.
Oh yeah, continue.
Oh yeah, just to that end, we're talking about how like people kind of embrace these things as their identity. I mean, I remember my first season in Ottawa. pesky sends was the thing. We were the pesky sends, and that was a thing online. And then, I heard a couple players refer to themselves as that. So I used the hashtag, and then like 6 weeks later, we were selling the t-shirts and the sweaters in the store. And then that kind of became the narrative for the whole season. So like, there is kind of an underlying power to all this stuff where, what could be a flippant tweet one day, all of a sudden becomes like an identity for an entire organization in a weird way. And it's just funny how things kind of play out that way.
Well, I think sometimes too,
and Chris, just quickly to that, I mean, on TSN, we used it all the time. We referred to them as pesky sends, hashtag pesky sends. And it was all, you think, I go back to Luongo. I mean, I'm interested to know if people know him better as Strongbow 1 rather than Roberto Luongo, the goalie.
Even though he's never,
right, like Hotline
as far as I know to this day, he has never come out and specifically said, yeah, it's me. He's done interviews. He has explained behind the tweets, but he's never said, yeah, it's me.
And there's a brilliance
Absolutely.
to that too, isn't
He's
it?
still got deniability.
Yeah, he does, which is great. And like that, like Hotline Blinn, Strongbow 1, the people are going to know those names more than
Craig, Nabil Karim actually told me about a name that I never, a nickname for you that I was not aware of, and that's known as.
Okay, now wait. Can I just before you say anything? Is this Nabil's? Is this Nabil's take, or is this an actual? Because he may not have even told me.
I'm not sure. Nabil said this, but he called you Butsy. I don't know.
Well, that was my nickname growing up. I don't know how original that is, but again, Nabil comes across as really original. I think all of his stuff is stolen, and he tries to put it out there.
Well,
he's a Twitter plagiarist. That's what he is.
He was not nice. Like his coworker Gurdeep Aliwala was brought up, and he was not nice at all in regards calling him a diva, and that he never comes.
Oh, Gurdeep is awesome. Like, if I had a choice who I could work with, Gurdeep or Nabil, I choose Gurdeep every time. Like, there's no way. Like, but I think that's more jealousy from Nabil's point of view, right? The diva is Nabil. He's just trying to deflect it.
Well, the diva didn't call you the nicest man in hockey, though, Craig. So,
I love Nabil. I love Nabil. He's wonderful. Those two guys are. When we all want to go to work and we take our work seriously, but ultimately we want to enjoy not only our work, but the people we work with. And, it's I've been real fortunate through my career to work with just fabulous people, but I can't think of, I can think of very few people that I didn't really enjoy them as people. And I think that's what I look back on and just feel really fortunate about.
It's such a cool, it's really cool too, when you think about it, where, TSN and hockey has been, behind some of the biggest, events. World Juniors is coming up. A lot of people say, that's the World Juniors, the house that TSN built. It's amazing over these years too, and you kind of get to know all these people, like Craig Button or James or James Duffy. And it's almost like they're a part of your everyday lives, right? You're used to seeing, and even like the reporters, Mark Masters, Matthew Shinetti, all those. It becomes it's such a huge thing in Canada. They also become the sportscasters and sports broadcasters become part of that culture as well.
But what I would say to that too, and I think that's where social media has had a real significant imprint, is that ultimately it's the fans. We're trying to grow the sport. We're trying to engage people in the sport and hear the different viewpoints and how they root for their team, what they like, what they don't like. And I think that's what's allowed the growth to really go. And so really what it comes back to is you want to engage with these people that have this passion. And that's what makes it. I don't think it's about. I mean, I think you could put a lot of different people in front of the camera on the World Juniors. The World Juniors is what people are interested in, and it's our job to make sure that people have the information surrounding it, and it's not only informative but fun too.
Chris, especially in TSN being in Toronto as well. Do you often have a lot of Do you have interactions with a lot of people from TSN, from the Leafs accounts? Do you make an effort sometimes? I'm sure, especially with Leafs lunch, with O-Dog and Noodles, Jay McLennan. There's got to be some fun there too, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover there. I know, like my day to day, I basically work as a kind of a beat writer for the Leafs, on top of doing the social media stuff. So day to day, I'm in there with the media every day. So I see Mark, I see Jonas. We the organization, we have players on Leafs lunch all the time, that sort of thing. So there's definitely a lot of crossover. Same with Sportsnet. Sorry, Craig, have to mention them. They're in there as well.
No, you do have to mention them. They're a big they're the national rights holder in Canada. You have to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I mean, Toronto's the hockey media hub of the world, on top of being the hockey market in Ontario. So it's at the end of the day, though, and I think that's one thing that kind of transcends traditional media, new media, all these things, is at the end of the day, we're all storytellers. And whether it's the World Juniors, we're telling the stories of kids who are going to play in the NHL in the near future. The NHL, we're talking about guys who are doing it as it happens. And looking even beyond that, guys in the Hall of Fame, NHL alumni, that sort of thing. At the end of the day, we're just telling the story of athletes and hockey players and human beings, and whether that's in the Olympics or the NHL or anything like that, you only do as good a job as the story you tell. So the more you kind of work on your craft there, the better job you're going to do, and the better people receive it.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's fascinating too from that, because Mark Wheeler, who I believe writes for the Pension Plan Puppets, and does a lot. I mean, he goes to great lengths to find streaming games of Leafs prospects and post videos of them scoring or making saves or whatnot. And I think that's just another medium of somebody that has obviously a great interest in the Leafs, but also knows that the fans do as well. And I always find it fascinating where these links come from, and it could be in Europe, and it could be a video from a game that was in Utica in the American Hockey League. But again, that whole fan engagement it's tremendous in Leafs Nation.
And it's a bit of a double-edged sword as well, with hockey fans being so technologically advanced. They're going to know the instant that you're wrong, and they can back it up with video or statistics that maybe you haven't seen. But at the same time, you can say, here's something you haven't seen. Here's, the lens I get to look at this through. So it's definitely double-edged, where you have to figure out, what you're looking at, where it is, and how you can track down the best possible things.
And
does that help us, Michael, in terms of making sure that we do the research ourselves and we're not putting out the wrong stuff, knowing that we'll get called on it quick?
And the thing about I have to shamelessly plug this, but I don't think Michael's going to have an issue. But the hockey fans being technologically advanced is actually in an article that I wrote for the NHL section on SportsIllustrated.com. And, that was all about, Craig, like second screen consumption, what we talked about in the beginning, the ability to, and, another article may or may not be coming up soon about, the prosumer aspect of it, like what we're talking about right now, the fans actually being active and creative, and like not only consuming the information, but also or shaping the content, right? They're creating it as well. It's like they're being put to work essentially, and they're not even like at work. They're just fans.
I think they're keeping people honest at this point. If you're a writer who can't keep up with the internet, with Twitter, with GIFs or things like that, then you're not going to do as well as you might. Even if your stuff is, statistically correct, if it's factual, if it's a great human interest story, if it's not getting out there in the medium it needs to, then it's not going to be as successful as it should be.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what do you think about that?
I have a new hashtag. I have a new hashtag for Peter, because he talked about a shameless plug. So his hashtag now is hashtag PDB shamelessness.
That's a little long, isn't it? Well, how about okay?
You've You've overcome it. I like it. It speaks to your perseverance and ability to overcome
There we go.
obstacles.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Perfect.
I can deal with that. No, for sure. Chris, I was gonna ask you, like with your, don't you think too that it's kind of, and actually this is something for everyone here. So this might be a bit difficult for Chris to answer because he is working for a specific NHL team. But when I started working for the QMJHL, or when I started writing for Sports Illustrated and got more involved in hockey, there was a team that I had growing. Like I was a fan of the Montreal Canadiens growing up. But the more I got involved in hockey, that fan aspect kind of left, and I was just appreciating all hockey. You know what I mean? I was, a fan of it all. There are some teams that I grew up not liking, hint the Leafs, Chris. But there were also teams that, I'll look now and I appreciate all hockey. I appreciate all the prospects. Don't you? Do you think, Greg? Do you see that happening with you as well? You back in the day were, of course, a general manager, director of scouting in the National Hockey League. So there might be some soft spots, when they play with the Dallas Stars. But you're a fan of all hockey, correct?
Absolutely, especially now because you're watching all the different teams. When you work for a team, you get more focused in on your own, more narrow in your view, and you're watching that team and trying to figure out a way to how to improve it and whatnot. And your loyalty is unwavering. So, but now you can appreciate the players and the way teams play, and not only that too. It's not just about the teams. I was listening to Phil Simms today talking on the NFL broadcast with Dallas and Carolina. And this is all this talk about Cam Newton and how he celebrates in the end zone. And Phil Simms, a former quarterback, and he said, I was looking at it and I had a problem with it. And then I started to ask, this is Phil talking, he said he asked himself, he said, the owner doesn't have a problem with it. The general manager doesn't have a problem with it. The coach doesn't have a problem with it. The players don't have a problem with it. So now Phil says, well, I don't have a problem with it. And I think it's not only celebrating the teams and appreciate. You can also, again, I go back to the personalities. And I think that here's Phil Simms. Back when he played, it wasn't like that. Accepting of it. And I think that, again, back to the whole social media discussion, I think that's the opportunities we have is to appreciate, the broader spectrum.
Chris, what do you think about that? Because I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I mean, like with respect to Fandom, obviously I have a team that I support, but at the same time, I spent a good chunk of time in Ottawa with the Senators, and I had a great time there. They're very good to me, and they win. They don't play the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I think the longer you do this, and the more you talk to people, I think you find that you don't necessarily wind up rooting for teams if you're an impartial spectator. Better, you start rooting for people. So you have players that you really like and get along with, and guys that you're good human beings and do a lot of good things, and kind of supporting a crest in your own mind. And for example, a lot of people, speaking from the team I'm with right now, a lot of people are thrilled with Reimers on this run because he's such a good guy and such a good human being, and seeing it. And I think that's a lot of it. Obviously, if you switch teams, you quickly change allegiances, as I'm sure Craig can allude to from his time working in the league. But at the end of the day, you just want things to go well. You want to wish the best for the best people, and you'll never, unless we're playing them, you'll never see me saying a bad thing about the Senators or Ottawa or anything like that. So it's just one of those things where it's you definitely skews your perspective, though. You don't watch the game the same way. You watch a lot more hours. You look for different things. You start rooting for different people on both sides of the puck, and for example, if I talk to a guy and I know he's having a tough go, he's in a slump, he's in something like that, I want that puck to fall to him and have it in and get the hockey off his back type of thing. So I want X, Y, and Z to happen.
Michael, is there some stuff you could speak to in terms of that as well? Like this concept
Sure.
of fan?
I don't think anybody gets into hockey because it's a 40-hour-a-week job and a paycheck. I think people that get into hockey do it because they're passionate about it. And, there's that responsibility as a fan to, not only root for your team or your favorite player, but also to grow the game however necessary.
Yeah.
I've dove right into the NWHL because I think women's hockey is the next step. I think it's something that has to grow, and on the whole, it's going to get a lot more people involved in hockey, and the more people that are involved in it that know how great of a game it is, it's going to make it so much better for everybody.
We actually had a player from that league, Chelsea Layden, who plays for the Connecticut Whale. We had her on the show, and she was talking about, growing the game and everything. But like I said, and Craig, you'll agree with me, obviously, of course, with this. Chris, you'll agree. There's so much cool stuff happening in the NHL right now with prospects and upcoming players, no matter where they're playing. It's a fun, exciting time for the game. To limit yourself to just following a portion of it, I would say, in my opinion, is wrong. You look at this draft coming up, and last draft too, Craig, there's some really good players coming in. I know it's always about, Connor McDavid's and Jack Eichels, Austin Matthews, but, QMJHL, Pierre-Luc Dubois is looking really, really good, and there are some players that have star potential coming in no matter what. So it's unbelievable the growth of it, right, Craig?
Well, and not only the growth, but the interest in it. It used to be that the young players, you heard about the top player and everybody else until they got to the NHL. I talked about Mark Wheeler. I talked about a lot of different people that follow prospects and give updates on a regular basis. I mean, I engage with people all over the world that are sending me thoughts. You should see this guy. Did you hear about this guy? And it's really, really fascinating, the depth of it. But we hear about those top players, but even for a player like Oscar Lindberg, who I watched from the time he was 17 years of age. And, he ended up being drafted by Arizona, then traded to the Rangers, played in the minors. And here he is, a little bit older, finding his way. Last Friday, I'm watching Calgary play Chicago in Calgary. And I've watched Johnny Gaudreau play since he was 16. And I'm at the game going, every time I watch this young man play, he shows me something I've never seen before. And that it's not so much about being excited at the time. I get excited for the next time. And for me, that really, back to Michael's point, that's the passion. That's what we're all in it for. What's next?
No, one of my favorite storylines now too is Connor McDavid, injured. That is a devastating blow to the organization. But you got a guy who people were talking about a lot about a couple of years ago, Leon Draisaitl, who is having an unbelievable start. And I think that is a little issue as well. You focus on the McDavids, the Eichels. They're fantastic players. They're amazing. But there are there's so much talent out there right now that they get kind of left in the shadows, kind of, don't you think? Chris, what do you, on the Leafs perspective too, right? Mitch Marner, Mitch Marner, has potential to be in my opinion, one of the best players in the whole National Hockey League. And, it was all about, of course, McDavid and Eichel, but Mitch Marner is looking really, really good. So it's almost it's like a good and bad. There's this focus on specific players, but like you said, there's all other players that you watch, growing up. It's kind of difficult to analyze.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I just speaking to the point of this kind of next generation at large. I mean, probably one of my favorite times of year is when I go to the draft and cover the draft, and you get to meet these prospects who are coming into the league, but we take them on draft day. You get to meet them, and they're all excited and wide-eyed because they've been, with Mitch, followed them around for a bit. This is a guy who got picked by the team that he grew up cheering for. He went to his first game at Air Canada Centre, saw the Leafs play the Senators, which is a bit weird for me, but it is what it is. And it's one of those things, you get these stories out of them, and then you meet their families, and they start telling you all this stuff. And it's kind of rejuvenating in a way, because I think a lot of times we get zoned in on certain nuances in the NHL. And storylines and whatnot, and some of it's good, some of it's bad, And it's just a lot of fun to kind of, strip that away a little bit. And you meet these kids, and that's what they are when you meet them. They're kids. I know there are a couple prospects that I've seen taken in the last couple of years where, you see them with the jersey and the hat, and you think that they're like some team's assistant general manager's kid who shuffles the jersey up to the stage when they actually select a prospect. And they're so young, and they're so excited, and they're so just kind of taken aback by all of it. It's really fun and really refreshing and rejuvenating in a lot of ways. And it's exciting because, especially as someone who's around this now, there's going to be a time, when Mitch Marner is on magazine covers and billboards in 5-6 years, be able to think back to, I was with him in Sunrise, Florida, walking around in the bowels of BB&T Center, getting ready to take his first rookie card shot, and, showing him, I got home a video that we did in Maple Leaf Square outside Air Canada, where we had our draft party, and the reaction when we touched Marner was insane. We showed it to him, and he was just kind of like, oh my God, like, what am I getting myself into? It's in a good way. And it was, stuff like that. These are the kind of things that stick with you. Curtis Lazar has been a great prospect for the Ottawa Senators, great player now for 2 years. And, I still remember his first development camp, him not really knowing what to make of anything. We knew the stats, we knew the pedigree, but we didn't necessarily know the player or the person. And now that's getting better every day. And it's just fun. It's fun. It adds a lot of fun, especially, when you cover an NHL season, it's a grind. It really is. It's a long season. 82 games is a lot. It wears on you. And, when you get these moments like that, where it's something that is going to stick in your head for a long time, I think that adds a lot. It kind of makes you chase the next day a bit more than you might otherwise.
Craig, what were you it seems like you were going to say something to that point, Craig.
Well, no, I was just going to, the leading scorer in the American Hockey League is a 19-year-old kid by the name of William Nylander. Yeah. So we talk about the McDavids, right? And yeah. but when you start to think about William Nylander, he's leading a professional league in scoring. He's still a teenager. Yeah. And again, so he's exciting. The Oscar Lindberghs are exciting. People may not have heard of Devin Shore, but Devin Shore's from Whitby. And he was drafted by the Dallas Stars. He's the second leading scorer, but because he might not be in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, somebody down the road will say, oh, wow, how good is this Devin Shore? And I love to see that part of it too. Yeah. These players that may not be known outside of the mainstream markets, and that's just the way it goes. And then somebody goes, well, geez, how good is that player? And you can go around the league and pick out a lot of different players this year that people didn't really have any background on, and now, wow, that player is good. And I think that just speaks again to your point, Peter, and to Michael and Chris's point. Every day is a new opportunity for some team, not only for us to see, but for us to see how good it could possibly be.
And to that, if you don't mind jumping in, that just reminds me of I remember a couple years ago when the Ottawa Senators signed Andrew Hammond at a Bowling Green. I had to write up the story and send out the press release and all that. And the number one response we got, because it was a college free agent at a Bowling Green, and nobody really knows the Bowling Green program that well, the response was, who cares? And you fast forward to last spring when Andrew Hammond is having arguably the single greatest run of any goaltender ever. It was really incredible. And I will admit that I got a little petty and started trying to search for all the who cares stories so I could start sending them back to people. But I let that one go. But it's funny to see, these, players can come out of the blue and seize opportunities, and these kind of things stick out in your mind when you get further down the road.
One of the things I would add to that, Chris, is, and I tell this to fans all the time, just because you don't know a player doesn't mean that player isn't good.
20 years ago, Alexander Daigle said no one remembers who goes second or who goes third. And no one should really remember that he went first. We're now at a point where, someone like Craig will take us 3 rounds into a draft before it even happens. And there are no sleepers. There shouldn't be anyone like Patrice Bergeron showing up at a camp who's a second round pick that no one really knows, and he makes the roster and everyone goes, what just happened? That doesn't happen anymore because all of this is available to us.
Last year with the Dallas Stars, Dennis Gurrianov goes 12th. I didn't, I was aware of Gurianov the whole year. He was like at one point in like the 40s and 50s at times, but I saw, like, I knew this player. He gets called up. Everyone's like, who's this guy? That player has potential to be one of the best like offensive players in the league, right, Craig?
Well, one of the things that I'm a big believer in, and you hear this often at drafts, you hear it in any draft. I don't care what draft you're ever part of. You hear this comment, oh, they went off the board. No, they didn't go off the board. No. They had their board, and just because your board doesn't reflect what they may be thinking or what they value doesn't mean they went off the board. It means they went off of what your knowledge base was.
Yeah.
And the NHL teams, they're watching these players for years, and they're debating and discussing who they want to be the part of their future, who they feel can help them be successful on the ice. So, a Dennis Gurianov or any other player for that matter, everybody's going to progress at a different rate because maturity for each and every individual is different. So it goes back. Just because you don't know a player, the NHL teams do know these players, and there's no off the board picks for the NHL teams. They've poured a tremendous amount of time into who they're going to select.
Absolutely. Well, I think with that said, we'll wrap up tonight's episode. This was a lot of fun. I understand all of you are really busy, especially Michael. Having a Thanksgiving festivities over there. I really appreciate you taking the time out to be on. So, before we go, closing remarks, anything you want to say, Mike?
Thanks for everyone for being here and sharing your point of view. And, just like everyone said, if you're not here to engage in a debate, to have fun, to, just generally enjoy being social, then what are you doing? It's time to ask that question.
Chris, what about you?
Good.
Just thanks for having me on, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. Obviously, everybody here, I'm familiar with your work. I'm a big fan of everybody, so it's a real pleasure to be able to have a conversation, even if it's via the internet. And it's great, and I hope everybody keeps having fun with it. It's a good time, and it's keep the ball rolling.
Well, I'm not going to thank Pete because he coerced me into doing this. So I feel that I was forced into doing it. I really enjoyed Michael and Chris, but Peter, it's just another example of you forcing me to do something. All kidding aside.
I know. I'm a bad influence. I know.
I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the exchange with Chris and Michael. It's enjoyable. And, I just wanted to follow up one thing that Michael said. Haley Wickenheiser, who I know very well, she's here in Calgary, and she's starting tomorrow. She has her Wick Fest, where women from different parts of the world, countries, teams come over and they participate in this Wick Fest. And, it's a really neat thing that she's undertaken to get women involved and young girls involved in hockey. And, like the NFL, where we see what a following they have with their female audience and how I think we have the same opportunity in hockey too. And I didn't want to let that go by from Michael's point earlier. And I think that we all, for me, I feel a responsibility to try to help in whatever way I can too. So, Michael, when I see your stuff on the Women's Professional League, you can count on me jumping on that and pushing that along.
I'll let you know. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, this has been a special episode of PopTernative. We had one yesterday. We had with Steve McAllister from Yahoo Sports and Carlos Verdi, and we have this episode today. So thank you, everyone who tuned in. You could follow us on Twitter at PopTernative. You can like us on Facebook, PopTernative. And if you missed any of our previous episodes, you can check them out on our YouTube pages and our SoundCloud pages. So thank you very much, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to PopTernative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of PopTernative on YouTube. Be sure to like PopTernative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.